Hello, everyone. It is Charles from the future. I am upfront with a content warning for this episode because we are covering Andor Season 2, Episode 3, and we are going to talk about the things that happen in Andor Season 2, Episode 3, Harvest. There is a trigger warning up front for discussions about sexual assault and sexual violence. We are going to telegraph multiple times throughout the episode that is coming up. We are going to telegraph when we are even going to mention the plot elements in the recap. And Bradley is also going to put the time codes for our specific discussion on those scenes in the description of this episode, so you can skip them if you want to. We just wanted to put this up front because of the sensitive nature of this particular topic. If you want to skip this whole episode, we'll see you next week. Otherwise, enjoy the show.
Welcome to the show Gold Squadron Gays. It's the podcast where two Star Wars loving gays talk about and review their favorite Star Wars content while also being gay as hell. I'm your host, Bradley Brower.
I'm your other host, Charles Rogers, and I don't have a funny intro.
Great.
Look, I'm just after having watched this episode again last night and thought about it. This episode's fucking depressing. I'm not making haha funny joke to open the episode because it's good. It's just fucking depressing.
Well, I was gonna ask you. So I only have 3 storylines to talk about on this whole thing.
Okay.
So 3 sections, right? I have Mina-Rau, I have Chandrillan, and then I have dinner with Eady. So on Coruscant. So based on how this discussion goes, do you want to end on? I was gonna say, do you want to start with the dinner scene?
Dedra. Let's then do Chandrillan, and then
you want to end on.
We'll deal with Mina-Rau.
No, I think that's good. I just didn't know what order you'd want to go in because I had it the other way, but I thought, I don't know, the Mina-Rau stuff is more impactful, so maybe that should go last.
It's very heavy.
Yeah. So
it's very heavy, and if people decide they want to check out for the Mina-Rau stuff, we'll put the two things up front, so you can listen to our discussion on Dedra and you can listen to our discussion on Chandrillan.
Yeah, that's actually a good idea. And then if you're like, nah, I want to check out, then you're good. Yeah. Okay, that's fair. We can definitely do that.
What do we have the distinct pleasure of talking about today, Bradley? And again, the episode is good and I liked it. It's just, I've been kind of low-key dreading having to talk about this one.
Today we're talking about Andor Season 2, Episode 3, Harvest. Time is running out for everyone. Charles, what's one thing you liked about this episode and one thing you did not?
I'm going to start with the one thing I did not like. All right, you ready? Hey guys, so later on in this episode, we are going to talk about the Mina-Rau plot. And when we talk about the Mina-Rau plot, we are going to have a discussion about sexual assault and sexual violence. If you are not comfortable with that, that is not something you are in the headspace to hear. We will warn you before we do it, and we will advise you to skip ahead, or you can just turn the episode off when we get to Mina-Rau. Do you see how fucking easy that was, Disney Plus? Do you see how easy that was to do? It was not hard.
I can't.
Yeah, there needed to be a better content warning at the front of this. Obi-Wan Kenobi did it.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
That's like, they've already done it
They
in
had
Star
to add
Wars,
it
so
retroactively to Obi-Wan Kenobi because Obi-Wan Kenobi opens with a school shooting.
Right.
And there was a school shooting a fucking week before the show came out.
I remember that.
It was like a big one, too.
That was a big deal, yeah.
So they added like a vague, like, there are scenes in here that might be upsetting to people. And there are content warnings at the top of, like, when you turn on the episode on Disney Plus, it will say this episode has X, Y, and Z. When this episode aired, the content warning only said intense violence. And the thing for me is that sexual violence is its own thing that is different than, in my mind, what intense violence implies. This episode badly needed a heads up front before we got into the actual episode itself. And that overrules any other dislikes I could have possibly had. I did not like being surprised by this when I watched the episode for the first time. And we'll get into my thoughts on, such as I'm comfortable sharing my thoughts on the scene itself later on, but we needed that up front. And the fact that Disney Plus did not put that on there is a big fucking problem. And I think part of why the reaction to this episode was the way that it was. One thing I really liked about this episode, the Niamo song being a fucking remix of song, like, in-universe pop songs. Like, they're actually listening to the club mix
Oh, it's
in
amazing.
universe of Niamos at the wedding. Um, Brandon Roberts, who's doing the soundtrack, doing the score for this season, absolutely a worthy successor to Nicholas Bertel. He is absolutely killing it with the music. I was actually listening to the music from episode 9 at work yesterday.
Oh wow.
Like I just put it on and
Yeah,
let
you're
that
just like,
episode
why not?
soundtrack play through because the music for this show is so good. And I also love the incorporation of diegetic music into the narrative
I do too.
because this is not the last time we will see Niamos pop up in the show.
Right. I also, this is kind of like a random note I had later, but it's just kind of goes in with that music. I love how the music is only in the wedding scenes until like the very, very end where they show Brasos's body and they're just like, it's still playing. And you're like, oh, fuck.
Mhm.
Like it gets so intense
Over
and
the
so good.
monologue.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, the way that the ending 10 minutes of this episode or so cuts back and forth
Yeah.
between like different scenes and the way that
Mhm.
the music
Keeps going.
switches
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
depending on which scene is a brilliant use of your score to
It's
heighten
amazing.
that disconnect between what's happening on the screen. What about you, Bradley? One thing you liked and one thing you did not.
One thing I liked about this episode was this episode was Edie's episode to shine. This was the funniest bit in the like the fact that they put that in this episode is so clever to me because it is such a heavy episode for the most part. So having this like tiny little bit of comedy, I mean, I think it's comedy where it might be like darker comedy, I guess, because it's it's kind of like depressing that she's this terrible mom, but I feel like it's really funny. That alone, I just cracks me up. Like the whole Edie Cyril dynamic is hilarious. And so I just loved that so much. Every scene she ate up every scene. Like she is a scene stealer. And I because Cyril and Deidre are so like proper and like reserved all the time, like I don't know, her just being so extra is just hilarious to me. So shout out to her. She's hilarious. The thing I did not like about this episode I actually don't really have anything. I kind of like all
That
of it.
is okay.
I think
We will.
everything's necessary. I think it's all makes sense. I think it's the pacing is good for everything. I like how Cassian is incorporated into the Mina-Rau stuff, so he's not on his own separate storyline anymore, which is what kind of should have been in the beginning, I think. So I like how it all kind of flows together. So I don't really have a complaint.
That is okay. We will when we get to particularly the back half. I can tell you right now, episode 9, there is not going to be a single thing that I have wrong with it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
watched it again with my boyfriend the other night,
Sure.
and I was like looking for things to be like, I need to try to find something wrong with this
Something.
episode. No,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
there's not a single thing that I found wrong with episode 9
All
whatsoever.
right.
I will also say when we watched episode 3 for the first time, it took us an additional like 10 minutes longer to get through this episode because every line that Edie says, we were laughing so hard I had to pause the show
Oh yeah, so good.
just so we could laugh at the scene and then
Yeah, because you don't want
turn
to
the
miss
scene
anything.
back.
Yeah, you're like, oh God.
I didn't want to miss any really funny lines from her.
No,
Yeah.
100%.
Well, we're starting with the Edie scenes. So I guess, do you want to just take us into the episode?
Sure. I had it as section 3, but I guess I'll change it to section 1. Dinner with Edie. Cyril and Deidre host a formal dinner for his mother, Edie. Tensions build as Edie dominates the conversation with passive aggressive remarks and personal stories, embarrassing Cyril and prying into Deidre's personal life. Deidre mentions her upbringing in the Imperial kindergarten, and Edie praises Deidre while simultaneously belittling her own son, especially over his former career as a security officer. After Cyril walks out, fed up with his mother's behavior, Deidre confronts her. She warns her to stop emotionally manipulating Cyril and sets firm boundaries. She even threatens to cut off contact if Eady continues. Later, Cyril overhears the exchange and re-enters the room to find Eady pretending everything is fine.
My first reaction to this sequence beginning was I love how domestic Dedra and Cyril
Oh, they're
are.
so precise on everything, and
They're
it's
so
just so funny.
precise in their domesticity. Like
Yes,
Cyril cooking makes so much sense to me.
I believe that 100%. And especially since in every other episode we've only ever seen him eat fucking cereal. So like the fact that he's the cook, he's the chef. Like I just find that so funny.
Well, Cyril likes to follow directions. So I guarantee you Cyril is the type of person who is following the recipe
Oh, to a T.
without deviation.
Yes.
He is not experimenting. He is following the recipe. exactly as it is written.
He is the Sheldon Cooper of the Star Wars series. He is like,
I feel like that is an insult to Sheldon Cooper.
but they have similar
But it's that
personality.
similar,
Yeah,
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 it's that
yeah, yeah,
similar
yeah.
level of I need to follow exactly the guidelines. I need to
Right.
follow
This is just how
exactly the
things are.
recipe.
Yep.
It's just how things are. And I love that about him. And I also love the little moment where he adjusts the table, something on the table.
Yeah. He's like, oh, that's slightly out of line. Like,
Well, because he needs to present this perfect veneer for his mom, who is just going to criticize him anyway. Right before she enters, because we'll talk about her in a second, I do want to note that there's a very specific shot of Dedra's hands behind her back,
okay.
and she has an anxiety tick.
Ooh.
You
Okay.
can actually see in that scene, it's very quick, it's an acting choice, it's not dialogue, but you can actually see that one of her fingers is twitching.
Oh,
She's
I
doing
didn't
an
notice
anxiety
that.
tick behind her back because she's standing at parade rest. She's got
Mm.
her hands behind her back, which is a very proper imperial stance. But since they're hidden behind her back, her finger is twitching, which, given some later scenes with Dedra establishing up front, she has probably an anxiety disorder
Oh, yeah, for sure.
that is not being treated. Yeah, Edie is the worst immediately, and I love her so much.
She just is there to complain. She's there to make a mess. She's there to be a menace. Like she always is a menace, and I just love that about her.
She, I just want to take her and dump her into the middle of a Temptation Island season. I just want to drop this immediately because she would absolutely eat everyone on the island for breakfast in ways that would be so funny to watch.
So you don't know this because you're not in the reality space, but there's already a show called MILF Manor.
Oh, really? I've
These
heard of a version of this that's
okay.
gay people.
It's called DILF Manor. It's the same show.
Okay.
I think they're just spin-offs of each
Isn't
other.
that
But
hosted by Stormy Daniels?
yes.
Okay. Just
So
checking.
so
Proceed.
you know how ridiculous it is,
I know
obviously.
how ridiculous it is. I
Yeah,
have
but
never watched Dilf Manor, but
I don't need to go into all
I've
the
thought
details,
about it.
but yeah, it's very funny and it's just these older women who are dating younger men on this reality show. I just feel like yes, she would work well in that situation and it would just be really funny
Well,
because I could see Cyril being on the show with so the idea is that you're on there with your sons and the other contestants are dating your sons.
oh,
So that's like
God,
it's fucked
reality
up.
TV so fucked up.
No, it's so fucked up. So and I feel like that would be
I
really
kind of
funny.
love it. A little, I kind of love the shamelessness of reality TV. It's like, no, all of these are terrible people, and you have to be a terrible person to want to be on this.
Oh, 100%. But I think she's terrible in a different way. I think she's just terrible in that because we get a lot about her backstory a little, well, not okay. It's not 100% her backstory, but we get like more glimpses of it, I
Yeah, we
guess,
get a little about Cyril's dad.
because she mentions him at one
Hmm.
point, and I was like, wait a minute, what happened with Cyril's dad? I want to know this story because she said something about him being an adventurer or something, and then
Yep.
he just fucked
He
off.
left to
And
go
then
be an adventurer, and he
right.
just fucked off.
Which, if you recall, didn't we just recently cover a story about a young boy whose father left him with his mom and like it's basically Treasure Planet. Like it's the
It's
same
basically
kind of
Treasure Planet. It's
thing.
anti-Treasure
Yeah.
Planet. Yeah, it's
Anti-Treasure
anti-Treasure Planet.
Planet. Yes.
Jim Hawkins grew up idolizing his dad.
Right.
Cyril Karn grew up being blamed for his dad,
Right.
which is part of the fucked up nature of this relationship. And I wish we had more seasons to explore the fucked up nature of this relationship. But what we get does explain a lot about
It
why.
does.
Because Edie will say multiple times throughout this season, like they really hammer home, she wants him to be on Coruscant. She wants him to be close to her. His dad fucking left her.
She doesn't want anybody to leave her.
And she didn't want anybody
Yeah.
to leave her. And that's
Yeah.
part of the tragedy of where this season will ultimately go is Edie does not want to be alone again. And
Yep.
the only family that she has that's in proximity with her, because she talks about having a good relationship with the family. We never see any of them around her.
Yeah.
We never see Uncle Harlow. We never see any like we never see her interacting with family members.
No, I don't think any of them actually are around. Like I think the way she talks about them is like in she talks about them like it's present tense, but I think like the way that they actually are is past tense because she talks about like, oh, like all my family, like especially Uncle Harlow, right? But from what Deidre kind of reveals is that Uncle Harlow is not a good dude. So he's probably like
Yep.
incarcerated or like not around.
He's not. He's around because he will have opinions later in the next episode. She will
Oh,
specifically reference Uncle Harlow has opinions about a choice Cyril makes.
oh, okay, okay.
So he's around, but I also get the sense that like she's not as connected to the broader family as she
Right.
thinks she is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I have a feeling
That
that they
she's
like they
kind of
all
on
ignore
the
her or something.
outskirts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think she's more tolerated within the broader family. And I think that's part
Right.
of the tragedy with her and Cyril is she's trying to cling to Cyril as a physical person so hard. And she's clinging to the idea of this family that she's kind of on the outskirts of.
But I love it. I find it all fascinating that she's just this terrible person, but like in a funny way. Like
Oh,
obviously
she's
Cyril.
also hilarious. Like
No,
what she's
no,
doing
she's
to
just
him
too
is
funny.
horrific.
Oh
Like is a
yeah,
very fucked up relationship, but she's also kind of super funny. Like we have
no,
to
she's
admit that the
hilarious.
actress is absolutely working the hell out of this role.
Right, because she's such a, if you think about it in like the broader terms of the show, she's such a throwaway character. Like, oh, she's one of the main character's moms. We don't really necessarily need to know or care about that character, but she is such a scene stealer and she's such a formidable reason why our one of our main characters is the way he is, which is why she's important. And I think that like you can't have one without the other. I don't know why, but like for some reason, we need Cyril's mom in the show because she just gives Cyril so much more context. Like it's so amazing.
I find it interesting that if you compare the characters of Edie and Marva, that the last conversation that Cassian ever has with Marva is Marva basically telling him, you need to drop this thing with your sister. You need to be willing to go out and leave me.
Right.
Like, I'm not going anywhere, but I understand that it hurts because I love you and I want you around me, but this is killing you. This will kill you. You need to drop this sister thing. You are meant for better thing than just clinging to us desperately and clinging to me desperately. All
Right.
Edie does is cling to Cyril desperately. And I think there's interesting contrast between those two characters. Let's just mention briefly here the space fondue.
Okay. Oh yeah. It looks
I
so
love
gross, by
space
the way.
fondue. Also, I need to shout out Denise Goss acting in this scene. Stedra's having the worst fucking time imaginable.
Oh, she's fed up.
And the facial expression she's pulling and like looking at Cyril, like she's somebody who desperately needs control of every situation. And as long as Cyril's there, she's not able to take control of the situation in the way that she would prefer to do it, which is brute force.
Right.
Dedra just mentioned having been raised in Imperial Kinderblock. Now that opens up several questions about the timeline here, but
Right.
that's okay. I have an explanation because the question then is how old is Dedra? How was she raised in an Imperial Kinderblock when the Republic only fell like 16 years ago?
Right, because I think I mentioned in the last episode the Empire's only 15 years old at this point. So how is there an Imperial Kinderblock? She's not 20 or like,
She's not 20
yeah, yeah, yeah. So like she's at least in her 30s, I would assume,
at
at
least.
minimum, right? So let's just for argument's sake say she's 30 years old. So she was 15 in a Kinderblock. That you know what I mean? Like I don't
I
know.
have an explanation for this because we also see a similar thing in episode 6. Orson Krennic mentions having attended the ISB Academy. Well, Orson Krennic
Mm,
was already working on the Death Star project by the time Revenge of the Sith happened. Catalyst established he was
right.
already involved in this. So how did that happen? My explanation for both of these things is there's a lot of retroactive
Mm,
Imperial stuff going on here.
I see.
We
Yeah,
don't talk about the Republic if we're a good little Imperial.
that's right.
We don't want
Yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
mention that the Empire has been not been around
For more.
because
Yeah.
these sort of fascist states and sort of nationalist states, they kind of have to retroactively make it so they were inevitable.
Right.
They don't want to be like, well, we've only been around for 10 years because that makes it seem like, oh, we could easily be removed. If we're retroactively saying, well, this has always been the system, we're just calling it the Empire now, that gives it more legitimacy. Palpatine even says in the Revenge of the Sith novel, which I highly recommend everyone read because it's fucking amazing. Palpatine even says in that novel, the way he describes the transition from the Republic to the Empire is he flat out admits in his speech that we've been an empire in all but name. And it's time that we make it an actual, like, we call it what it is. So it's that retroactive, well, we were always doing this, we just changed the name. So I think what happened is she grew up in a Republic orphanage.
Yeah.
And because she's buying into the fascist propaganda, she's calling it an Imperial Kenderblock.
Right. That makes sense.
I think that's what's going on personally in that scene. That's how I'm explaining away some of these discrepancies.
Right. And it could also explain too why Edie is so, not that she wouldn't already be dismissive of it anyway, but like when she talks about like, oh, you didn't have a mother's love and da 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 da, she could be equating that to, oh, that was the Republic way of doing things. And then eventually it turned into the Empire, but the Republic wasn't very good in the beginning, you know, because now we have the Empire and that's great. So I could see that also being an explanation of her being like, oof, you grew up in the Republic orphanage.
Well,
Like, yikes.
Edie's also like, again, Edie must twist everything to be about herself.
Sure.
She's a narcissist. She absolutely must twist everything to how it affects her. So obviously the thing she's going to be the most concerned about is, well, you grew up without a mother's love. And, you know, a mother is the most important thing, and children should have their mothers
Yes, of course she would say
around.
that. Yeah, yeah.
Woman who is taking my son away from me.
Yep, that's exactly what it is.
My next note, I'm just going to read verbatim. I cannot stop laughing at the worst dinner of all time. Dedra then delivers one of the most iconic monologues of all time the second Cyril leaves the room. And you know what? There are not a lot of points where I'm on Dedra's side in this season because she does go full fascist
Yeah, of course.
as the season progresses. Kind of on her side on this one.
She
I
doesn't
get
say anything incorrect.
I get that she's exerting control over Cyril.
Yeah.
And that's fucked up and toxic. However, if I had the chance to tell off an older relative in this manner with this level of leverage, I'm not going to sit here and pretend I wouldn't take it.
Yeah, that's true. She is very authoritative, and she just. But I also think that like this is kind of the way Edie needs to be spoken to get to understand. You know what I mean? Like she doesn't
Right.
get it unless you talk to
She
her this
she
way.
tries, like Edie
Right.
tries to do her thing in the middle of it, and Dedra's like, shut the fuck up.
Right. Let me talk.
This is no, see, you're laboring under the delusion that you still live under a republic system where everybody gets a voice.
Right.
I'm ISB. You don't get to treat me this way, and you don't get to treat my partner this way, and I will bring the full leverage of the fascist secret police that I work for to remind you that I am in control of this situation. She literally says, which is one of hands down the best Dedra lines of the show, I will guarantee a level of engagement, but it will be inversely proportional for the amount of anxiety you bring to our lives. Which is an amazing line. Fucking love it. And then Cyril on the bed is
The Cyril on the bed meme will live forever in infamy. That's so
that's
funny.
one of the best memes to come out of this season, honestly, is Cyril lying on the bed. I think we
It's
moved
too
on from
realistic.
that meme. I think we moved on from that meme too quickly.
I do too. I feel like that should be a staple now that people use because I think it's so
It's
funny
so funny. It's so funny.
and so real.
And not in the script. That was decided upon on the set. And Kyle Solar did an interview where he was like, are we pushing this too far? Like, is this going to go too far into comedy? No, it works so
No,
well.
I don't think it's. I mean, it's funny, but it's not like laugh out loud funny. It's like
It
that's
has that
relatable
beautiful,
funny.
it's
Yeah.
that beautiful tinge of dark relatability
Yes.
that underscores this entire scene because what's happening here is extremely fucked up on all levels with all three of these people. But it's so relatable and hilarious that you kind of forget about it.
Section 2, a Chandrillan wedding. On Chandrilla, Mon meets with her daughter before the ceremony. She tries to bond by reflecting on her own arranged marriage and regrets. She tells Lita that she can back out or delay the marriage, but Lita rejects the idea. Lita and Stekken perform a traditional Chandrillan wedding ritual, including the cutting of Lita's braid, and during the reception, Davos Golden gifts a rare statue to the newlyweds, thanks to Luthen. Luthen socializes and subtly observes Tay Kolma, who, after a tense exchange with Mon, leaves the party early. Mon meets with Luthen, who scolds her for trusting Tay, seeing him as a problem. During the party, Mon dances drunkenly. Tay is intercepted by Cinta, disguised as a driver. As she is about to leave, she makes eye contact with Vel, and they look at each other grimly. Mon continues twirling in the dance hall, drinking away her pain.
I'm going to do something that no one expected me, Mon Mothma Stan, to do
Uh-oh.
in this first scene with Lita and Mon. I'm going to kind of defend Lita's reaction
I I think I
because
will too, actually.
if you watch her face as Mon starts talking, it is abundantly clear that from Lita's point of view, Mon is making literally the moment before Lita gets married, the last moment they will ever have together, as something that's about her. It's about Mon.
Yeah.
So from Lita's point of view, she's always felt left out by her mom. She's always felt a disconnect from her mom because Mon is so busy. Lita has never had time to really bond with her. And
Right.
from Lita's point of view, this is the last moment and it should be about Lita. And rather than be happy for this choice that Lita has actively made, she has chosen this. She wants to do this. Yes, it's fucked up, but from her point of view, this is what she wants. For Mon to take this final moment and be like, are you sure? Like, you can back out of this if you want to, which I understand why Mon's doing it. But from Lita's point of view, Mon is selfishly claiming this last moment one more time. So I kind of understand the actress who is playing Lita, whose name I do not remember, is selling this so well that she's gradually becoming more upset as Mon keeps talking about herself and keeps projecting her own problems with her marriage onto Lita.
I kind of love how they do it too, because Mon, like the way she presents it to Lita is that, oh, I hated my mom when we did the same thing because she was drunk and I was so pissed off that she was drunk and she was ruining my moment. And then she's turning around and doing the same thing by, like you said, making it about her. And it's so great that she doesn't realize that she's doing it until Lita's like, I wish you were drunk.
Because I do think too, like Mon bringing up her own mother and doing all this, nobody has ever told Lita she doesn't have to go through with this because Mon arranged this. She put this in motion to cover up her own financial problem.
Right.
And at the last minute, we're kind of starting to see throughout this episode the Mon Mothma we will see in episode 9 start to emerge where she's saying, actually, damn the consequences. This is going to be a problem for my daughter. I am going to try to fix this, but it's too little too late. Like, she's never really understood her daughter. She's never really taken the time to understand her daughter, and she's never really taken the time to let her daughter understand her. And this is part of the tragedy of this family, is that both of these women have hurt each other very deeply over the course of this relationship, but it's really neither of their fault, but it's kind of both of their fault. It's messed up the situations that they are in. And so for Lita to like have this final moment of defiance, for her to throw this back in Mon's face and say, I wish you were drunk. I wish you were normal
Right.
about
I wish
this.
you're a normal person. Yeah.
I wish you weren't this like closed off person that, because I think she would have really wanted a relationship with her mom, but by the time we meet her in season 1, that's already started to not become a possibility. And every time Mon tries, it's through the context of like her status. And this is a really, really interesting and heartbreaking scene to watch.
Especially right before what is considered to be a happy moment in your life.
Yeah. Like, no shit, Lita reacts the way she does. She's a fucking
Yeah.
teenager.
Yeah.
Obviously she does. And I think sort of the end of Lita's character, because this is her last like substantial scene, and this is
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
her last episode. Mon and Lita will never interact again
Yeah.
in the
That
show.
we know of, right?
They will never interact again over the course of the show, and we never know any interactions they have
There's
in the
nothing
future.
in the expanded world that we know anything about,
No,
right? So
we do not know what happens to any of them because the characters originated back in Legends, but we didn't get a lot on them either. And also there's an older brother that's in the picture in Legends. It's a whole thing. We don't have time to get into it. But this is the last time they will interact with each other. And that's what I think makes the moment after Lita says, I wish you were drunk, so fucked up. Because if you watch the expression on Genevieve's face, and you also, who is this actress who is playing Lita? Because I am heaping praise on her, and I feel like I need to check and see. Bronte Carmichael. She doesn't say it, but you can see on her face that they both know this relationship is over between the two of them.
right. What
way
was
Mon
maybe
acts-
a civil relationship? Yeah, it was like it's done.
It's over.
We're done. Yeah, I don't need
It's
to talk
done.
to you anymore.
Well, I think both of them regret it too, because the
Yeah.
look on Lita's face is not a look like when Mon is faced away from her, because Mon doesn't really look at her again directly in the face again.
Right.
When Mon is turning away from her, we see Mon wiping tears away. But Mon also, like, once Lita has said this to her, Mon basically says, okay, if
You're
this
right.
is what
Yep.
you want, I'm going to do exactly what you want. And I'm gonna go forward with the Chandrillan custom of me standing in front of you.
Right.
And I think that's an interesting choice because it means that neither of them are looking at each other. So we see Mon wiping tears away, and it's very tragic because she loves her daughter and she does want to have that relationship that is now destroyed. But we also see in Lita's face, she looks kind of shocked and horrified. Like she's better at masking it, but she looks really upset when her mom like steps out in front of her and essentially drives that wedge home between them. I think Lita finally has realized the severity of what she's lost. And I wish we had Lita in later episodes, particularly to see her reaction to episode 9.
Yeah, I wonder why I mean, it's
Time.
not really a spoiler because it doesn't actually, nothing happens that we'll talk about like the plot later. But yeah, why isn't we aren't getting any of them in the
There
final bits.
they were supposed to be a scene where there was supposed to be a scene rounding that out and it got cut.
I mean, I get it for time, but like,
Yeah, again, because we're cutting it down to the bone. And this may be the biggest sacrifice of we have
I
to
agree.
chop this down to the bone, is we kind of get to see what happens to Perrin, and we'll talk about it.
Right, yeah.
But we never find out what Lita's reaction to all that was. And her relationship to her mom was so important, particularly in these first 3 episodes.
Yeah, because, and I don't think this is a spoiler to talk about, but I think it would be interesting because we know what happens in Star Wars. But I think it would be interesting to see after everything goes down in Star Wars, what Lita's reaction to is to like, okay, now the Empire's gone, and it was because of things that my mom did.
Now my mom is the Chancellor of the New Republic.
Right. So how does that,
How
like,
does
they
that
have to
work?
reconnect at some point because there's just no way.
There's no way that if they roll in high society in the way that they do, that the
Right.
Chancellor of the New Republic,
Yeah.
who is from Chandrilla, literally the New Republic capital is
Yeah.
Chandrilla while she's Chancellor, because it moves around.
Yeah, I have
So
to believe that she reconnects because I just don't. And then they kind of forgive each other for everything. She's like, "I'm sorry, I couldn't tell you everything." Blah 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 blah. You know, I could see it already. But like,
there's people that want them to reconnect. There's people that want Perrin and Mon to get back together because of stuff we'll talk about in the final episode, and also stuff that was cut out of the final,
right?
that was cut out of episode 9 that really recontextualized Perrin's character. Maybe eventually one day.
Yeah.
I kind of like the tragedy as it is.
I do. I see.
I
That's okay. That's
kind of
my
love the tragedy of this family
right.
in a way that it is so heartbreaking what Mon ultimately sacrifices to become the woman that she will become, and the impact that's going to eventually have on
Exactly.
her family that she was close to. And it starts here, and it starts now, and it starts with her having to let her daughter go.
Yep.
And how difficult that is for her. And her daughter's not the only person she's going to have to let go today, but we'll talk about that in a second. We get to the fucking ceremony.
Okay.
There's a wonderful shot of Vel who looks like she wants to murder everyone in the room.
I just love that she's like the 30-something girl who never got married because for obvious reasons that we
For
know,
obvious
but,
reasons.
But I just find it funny that like everybody around her though looks at her as like just like this what do they
She
call
is.
it when you don't get married and you're like an old lady?
Spinster.
Spinster. Yeah, they look at her
She's a
like this
spinster.
spinster in their culture, and it's just so funny because it's like she's just like, ugh, this is just annoying.
She is every queer person at a super conservative wedding.
Yes.
If you are a queer person and you have ever had to attend a super conservative relative's wedding,
Mm-hmm.
she's pulling faces that you know.
I love it.
Because you have pulled those faces. Because this wedding makes me so angry.
Right.
I feel visceral rage towards stuff that happens in this ceremony. Because what the fuck?
I love it.
The line I specifically wrote down is the moment where Perrin, the father of the bride,
Yes.
hands the knife to Stecken and says, I will not return this knife. Or Stecken says, I will not return this knife. And Perrin says, do with it as you wish. And then they use it to cut Lita's braid. And this is obviously about the woman being traded away by the men in this ceremony Whew.
No, I thought it was really weird phrasing because I was like, he's like, here's the knife. He's like, do with it as you wish. I don't care. But I don't think he's necessarily talking about the knife. He's
He's
talking
talking
about
about
the
the
daughter,
woman,
the
yeah,
woman that you're
in the
giving away. Yeah.
situation.
You
He's
can do whatever
giving
you want with her. Like,
here's
it doesn't matter if you treat her
exactly
well. It
because
doesn't matter,
she's
whatever. Yeah.
property,
Yes.
because she's not a person
Yes.
anymore. She
Crazy.
is literally being exchanged. The ceremony, despite all of the talk about the families coming together, the ceremony is not about the families uniting or Lita and Stecken uniting. It is a very conservative. The woman is leaving her birth family and joining her husband's family.
Right.
And what I love about this as a writing choice, even though it makes me violently angry at the show, like I shake with rage at the show. What's beautiful about this to me as a writer is the understanding of what makes this inherent sexism in a patriarchal culture so fucking rage inducing without actively like taking from a real world culture, because then the problem is you're making a commentary about that real world culture. And the beauty of how this scene is written is it's a commentary on the patriarchal nature of Chandrillan elite society without like by distilling it down to its core elements and understanding this. And I think it's such an excellent way to write the scene because it makes me want to punch these adult men in the face for going along with this. I feel so angry towards Perrin in this moment, which, again, to be fair to Perrin, he didn't want this. He thought this was a good idea, but he's also now going along with it.
Yep.
And if anybody could have talked Lita out of this, it would have been Perrin.
I think if he genuinely didn't want her to do this, he would have made it happen. Like he would have made sure that it wouldn't have happened.
He would have talked her out of it.
Yeah, he would have talked her out of it because I don't think he genuinely, it's not that he doesn't care. I think he just realizes that it's her choice. I think in the end, I think he does have a better connection with her and he can kind of see that this is genuinely something she wants. She might not, from our perspective, actually understand what she's getting into, but from his perspective, she is making her own decision in a way. And so he's respecting her making her own decision because they have a better connection than she does with Mon.
I fucking hate this ceremony.
It's very beautiful though.
It's a well written. Oh,
Yeah.
it's beautiful to visually look at.
Visually
what's
look at it,
happening
it's
in
gorgeous.
it is
Yeah.
intensely fucked up.
Yeah, I love it.
Intensely fucked up. Also, the use of the word maiden and the white wedding dress to like drive home the purity element of it, because like, oh, I need to move on. I need to move on, or I will get angry at this fictional wedding for existing. I love a moment wherein Lita, the couple, is presented, and as Lita walks by, do you notice Vel grabs Mon's hand? Because I want to point out that throughout this entire wedding art, the only person who is directly emotionally supporting Mon is Vel.
Right.
Nobody else is directly supporting her emotionally. Tay is being weird. Perrin's kind of being an asshole. She's fighting with Lita. Luthen is just lecturing her.
Stressing her the fuck out.
Nobody's having a good time at this. Vel is the only one who's like giving her emotional support. And that will be important to Mon's final shot of the entire show.
Right.
That Vel is the only member of her family that is directly emotionally supporting her. We do find out what the Shandi Merle is. And once again, we get mention of the Rakatan invaders. The Rakatan invaders, if you do not remember from our season 1 coverage, that is a reference to something that was established in the video game Knights of the Old Republic. They are in Legends, a galaxy-spanning empire that lasted for a really long time. They are a major part of the Dawn of the Jedi comic series, and they are gone by the time of Knights of the Old Republic, but much of the plot of Knights of the Old Republic revolves around a Rakatan, we'll call it a super weapon.
Okay.
So Andor season 1 recanonized the Rakatan invaders, having taken over the galaxy 25,000 years ago. This is another reference to it. I need to ask a very serious question that I only thought of when it was discussed by our friends over at First Steps Star Wars podcast. Do we think Erskine and Luthen hooked up at this wedding?
What?
Do we think that Erskine got involved with the rebellion because he and Luthen hooked up at this wedding? We know Luthen recruited him, but do we think there was something going on here?
No, not at all.
No, because I think a case could be made.
No. Get your book talk out of here. And
they're giving me that vibe a little bit.
no, You guys are
Look,
crazy.
you know how weddings do be, Bradley.
I do know how
You know
weddings
how
do
weddings
be.
do be.
I
And I'm
think
just
that
saying,
no.
no.
No, because here's what's actually happening. I think Luthen doesn't care about him until he mentions the whole Gorman thing, and then he goes, "Oh wait, Naboo, Gorman, Chandrillan. Okay, wait a minute. Something could be here. Like there's a case here that I could use you for something." And then he immediately doesn't care because he's interested in what Tay's doing. So I don't necessarily think that anything remotely happens. I think he's more
Mm,
interested about the problems with Tay because that's more important to the current situation.
look, that's then dealt with. So now he's free to enjoy the wedding.
Yeah, but the real question is when does he make okay, I know we're kind of jumping around, but like when does he make that order? Because it's pretty quick. Like from him seeing Tay doing and he was already worried about
He
the day before, but like
he has put that in motion the day before.
okay, so he already made that decision yesterday. And
He
then
made that
now
decision
he's
yesterday
like
that was
even
going to
more
happen.
so confirming his choice because he's like, "Oh shit, he's stumbling around, running into people, like something's going on there." Yeah, okay. I could see that.
Yep. It's interesting you bring up Erskine is half Gore. So
Yes.
his mother is Gorman. We also get more backstory in him in that his mother and his father were not married, that his
Right.
father was married to someone else, which is a nice little bit of backstory for him.
But it's good backstory, but it also makes sense because from what we know about Chandrillan culture, right? Like it's not that weird if they kind of sleep around, right? Because we
But
kind of implied that already.
but you shouldn't be having kids out of it.
Well, that is probably the actual scandal, right? Is
That
that they
the
had
actual
a child was
scandal is that
produced.
they had
Right.
a child.
Right.
And Mon sweeps up and is like, "No, I'm going to give you a position as my assistant."
Right. Because he's probably like people probably don't want to associate with him in
Yep.
like higher
In
society.
high
They probably
society.
consider him, he's a bastard. They're like, okay, I don't want to deal with him. Like,
Well, it's also like that's kind of a thing you do historically with bastards
yeah,
is, especially if they're like, maybe close to the upper class, but they can never be part of it, is you'll employ
right.
them as like assistants or you'll employ them as like servants or you'll find something cushy for them
Sure, sure, sure.
because they are somewhat familiar with the upper class. So they're pretty decent, but they can never actually join it. So there's only so high that they can rise. But you find somewhere cushy to stash them. I thought it was really interesting that in Tay's sort of last conversation to monologue, like his discussion with Mon, he talks about the need to like the lesson he's taking from this is stand up, speak out
Right.
if there's something you want. And he's saying it really selfishly, but that is the last thing he ever tells her
Right.
is if there's something you need to feel like you need to speak out about, you need to have the courage to say it, which is an interesting choice for him to impart that lesson to her, but in a way that is not the really like positive version of that we come to associate with it.
Sure.
We also find out he has been having secret meetings with Davos Golden
Right. So
without Mon.
there's something going on there, clearly.
There's something going on there. You can actually see the exact moment on Mon Mothma's face where she realizes he's going to get killed.
Yeah.
And it's when she's having the conversation with him and when she learns that he's having meetings with Davo.
Yeah. It kind of sucks because he's such an interesting character too. Like I kind of wish we would have gotten more of him and not just like all the stuff he does is off screen. Like I would have liked to like know what he's doing necessarily more. Like I don't know, it's just very interesting. But I do like that. Yeah, I know Davo's both the enemy but also now father of the groom. Like so it's kind of like a really tricky situation that she's found herself in.
Yeah, the Mon subplot characters are some of the most interesting in the entire show. And I do wish that we had part of the show really should have been 3 seasons.
I
I I
know.
get why they chopped it to 2, but I really think even a lot of this stuff that's left on the cutting room floor could have been fixed even with 3, even with just a little more time to breathe, with just a
Yeah,
little more of a moment in there.
you could have done
Because
half and
yeah,
half, I think. Yeah, for sure.
Davo's really interesting. His wife is really interesting. Tay is really interesting. If we'd had season 2 be a little bit longer version of the first 9 episodes of this season, and then season 3 could really delve into where this ultimately goes. I think that one of the things that could have been interesting to explore are these characters. And much as I don't necessarily trust certain people who work on the New Republic shows to handle some of these characters, I do want to see them
Yeah,
come back.
I think so.
I do want to see them let Noah Clore write these episodes. Actually, you know what? I will say that. I will name drop that. Let Noah Clore write this because
There you go.
clearly he's capable of doing it.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I think that's why, like, when we watch those episodes of Mandalorian, or that one episode of Mandalorian, it was like the New Republic show needs to be a thing because you could see how all these characters that they've introduced in Andor are thriving or not thriving in the New Republic. I would love to see those people because it is political, but I want to see, like, how does, Davo act, like, I don't know, now that there's no
Is
empire,
he
like,
still around or was he
right.
tried for crimes?
Right, exactly. Is
How
he
is
still
Mon
rich? Is he
dealing
not
with the
rich? Yeah.
fact that her brother-in-law, I think he's her brother-in-law. I don't know how that works.
Who?
Davo,
Her brother-in-law. It's her daughter's.
what's your relationship to your daughter? It's not brother-in-law.
No.
Your daughter's
I think
father-in-law.
it's yeah, I think it's just in-law. They just call it
Her
in-law.
in-law basically. Her in-law basically is a gangster and now
Yeah.
she's the chancellor.
Oh, yeah, that is kind of really
Like how
tricky.
does she deal with that? Like cuz Mon does a pretty good job at her chancellorship of
Yeah.
like being pretty squeaky clean the whole time. I think that it's very interesting like to look at that relationship in the context of the New Republic, which I think the New Republic and the sequel trilogy era continue to be very fertile ground that they're starting to dip their toes into.
Yep.
And I do really like now that we've had some distance from the sequels and we're not trying to make up the stuff as it's coming out and keep having to change it
Right.
because
We can
we change
expand now.
directors
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
writers midway through. So I do think that's interesting fertile ground. Also, Tay almost says something to Mon and then doesn't and then leaves. And I'm sorry to Taymon shippers everywhere
Yeah.
for this moment specifically. I am sorry. You guys are really out here in the trenches suffering.
I was gonna say, as much as I'd love to play the game of no body, no crime, unfortunately, if Cinta's driving the car, I have to believe that
I
it
have
happened.
enough faith in Cinta that that motherfucker is
Yes.
dead.
I believe in her, and unfortunately, she is not gonna let him just go.
Couple little notes from the Andor trivia guide for week 1, specifically quoting here, quote, the wedding dance to season 1's diegetic synth pop track Niamos was among the last shot for Andor season 2 in January 2024. And then another piece of trivia, quote, some of the wedding guest speeders were reused from production on The Acolyte, a series that had previously reused some of Andor's season 1 speeders during shooting.
Oh, that's kind of fun. Which, again, we had this discussion before. All the shows should be doing this.
Yes.
I don't know why sharing assets has become like a weird, like, oh, only
Keep
Andor
the
stuff should be in
assets.
Andor. Like, yeah, it's stupid. Like, no, Star Wars should be shared by Star Wars. Marvel should be shared by Marvel. Like, that way it brings cohesion to the universe. If you have these things pop up again and are reused and repainted and whatever, like, it makes it all seem
Keep
like a
the
big
assets, guys. Just keep reusing them. You can
100%.
do it. So this conversation between Luthen and Mon, I think is really interesting because we see that Mon's still trying very hard not to admit what has to happen for the rebellion. And Luthen tells her, like, I'm doing it to protect you. I'm doing it to protect your value to the rebellion, which she will throw back in his face later.
Right.
But that's why he's doing this. It's not because he's annoyed with Tay, it's because Tay is a liability, and Luthen is willing to do whatever it takes. Mon doesn't quite understand what whatever it takes is. This is her first real breath with someone getting fucking murdered so that she can survive. And that's important context to later on in the season that
Yep.
this is not a thing that she is around, and this is a thing that she is uncomfortable thinking about. So, Mon's reaction to this level of stress is to knock back shots and get white girl wasted.
Which I don't think we've ever seen in Star Wars.
We have, in fact, seen people use alcohol in unhealthy ways to cope in Star Wars,
Oh, okay.
but not quite to this level of white girl wasted.
Right.
And this was very uncomfortable for me to watch because using alcohol to not deal with your crippling guilt is a thing that hits a little too close to home for me personally.
Yeah.
Because this is a thing it is really easy to start doing. And once you start taking those shots, it becomes a lot harder to stop taking those shots.
And the fact that this is all, I mean, we'll talk about it in a minute, but the fact that this is all intercut with the stuff on Mina-Rau is so intense. Like, it's just so, like, a good, like, at the end.
Yeah,
Like,
and
ugh.
and also like the juxtaposition of how people on Mina-Rau react to being in situations where they are powerless. Multiple
Right.
people on Mina-Rau are in those situations. To how Mon reacts, which is Mon reacts by doing the only little rebellion that she can do because she's
Right.
extremely trapped in this. She's at her daughter's wedding in public, surrounded by high society. This is the only thing she can do is get drunk and cut loose. That's the only thing that's socially acceptable. And even that's not as socially acceptable because they say multiple times that getting drunk is seen as bad form here. And
Right,
like,
because yeah, I think it's brief blink and you miss it, but there's a part or there's like a quick clip where Perrin notices.
yeah, Perrin actually looks really genuinely
He's like
concerned
worried.
about
Yeah,
her.
he's like,
He
"Whoa,
looks at her and he's like,
you don't
because
get drunk like
she
this." Yeah.
never does this.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
She's not the one that cuts loose. He's the one that cuts loose and has fun, and she's more reserved. So for him to see his wife essentially breaking down like this, he's also trapped because he can't do anything about it. God, this was such a good, this arc, it was such a good subplot.
Yeah.
This was so heartbreaking.
I will say that this is like a nice, it is also another blink and you miss it thing, but there is a moment where Vel is kind of like depressed and like by herself, and she's just kind of like, she knows what's about to happen with Cinta. But it's also kind of like, not even that, but the fact that Cinta was coming to this planet and didn't even bother to see her.
Yep. She came, she didn't bother to see her, and she's also about to fucking murder Tay. Like, that is going to happen.
And it sucks because like she already feels alone. And so she's even more alone because her literal girlfriend is here. And then she's like not ignoring her.
Sorry, I
Basically.
gotta
Like,
work, and the thing I
yeah,
gotta
it's
work is
like,
doing
ugh.
is political violent in order to fund in order to protect the rebellion. So just as a heads up, that is the end of the Chandrilla section and the Dedra section. If I'm once again going to say, if you are sensitive to discussions or mentions of sexual assault, Bradley is going to mention it in his recap. And then I will also say before I get into my thoughts on that scene, such as I'm going to share them. So if you don't want to hear any mention of the scene in question at all, this is the point where you need to either check out or skip ahead past Bradley's recap.
Section 3, Trouble on Mina-Rau. Cassian, drifting in space, attempts to rewire his TIE ship, causing it to spin out of control. On Mina-Rau, villagers feast while Team Ferrex prepares to flee due to Imperial scrutiny. Kellen warns of crackdowns of undocumented migrants and arranges a cover story for their escape. Cassian communicates with Clea, who warns of Mina-Rau's unsafe situation, prompting him to head there immediately. Tensions escalate as the Ferrex crew prepares to leave. Brasso comforts B2, telling him they must leave him behind. They realize Wilman has disappeared to say goodbye to Bila, and Imperials arrive, interrupting their preparations. Wilman runs off, and Brasso searches for him, leaving Bix alone. Cassian arrives on Mina-Rau in the TIE fighter, and Lieutenant Kroll confronts and threatens Bix. Brasso tries to sneak into a general store, but is caught by stormtroopers. He feigns anguish against Kellen to protect his family, and Kroll assaults Bix, but she fights back and fatally injures him. Brasso manages to escape on a speeder. Cassian arrives, firing from the air and killing many Imperials. Unfortunately, Brasso is killed during the escape. Cassian, Bix, and Wilman flee Mina-Rau together in the TIE Avenger.
This is a very visually pretty show.
I love Mina-Rau. I will
That's
say.
my opening note. Well, I love the bits of Cassian in
Oh,
space.
just in space. Oh, I
Yeah,
will say
in
that
space
was
it's
really pretty.
gorgeous.
That shot.
Mina-Rau is
Yeah.
gorgeous. There's a shot of him flying down through the atmosphere, like
Oh,
where you can
amazing.
actually see the field start to appear.
Yeah, you can see the little
As he
like they look like
descends to the
hexagons or
planet.
something, I think. Yeah, it looks really cool. I
The
love
show
everything
is
about this show.
beautiful.
No,
The show is
but
beautiful.
but that opening shot of the episode where it's like it goes into it's the title and then it's space and then it goes into the TIE drifting in space. The shot goes in through the window, like it's zoomed out and then it like slowly goes through the TIE window. Such a great shot. I love when something does that, like in any film where you like you go into the thing that you're on the outside of already. I don't know.
Yep.
Great shot.
They've done it with this show. They've done it with other Star Wars properties. Like it's always a really fun shot too when it comes in through the window.
Right.
I loved B2 playing with the children.
That was really
That's
cute.
so cute.
But I don't like that because I knew that like I don't know why, but something told me like he's so comfortable here, he's never gonna leave.
He's getting left. See, there was a lot of theories at the time that Cassian would like cannibalize him for parts for K2.
That's what I thought.
That's what you thought.
I genuinely thought that they were
I
gonna do
liked
that.
that didn't happen.
I do, but I also like it is kind of fucked up that they leave him behind by the end of this episode.
Well, he's not alone by the end of the series, but we'll
True.
get there when we get there.
Hey, he's with Talia on
He is with Talia.
Mina-Rau.
They do leave him with Talia.
And she's much prettier and nicer than Brazo, apparently.
Apparently, I think the character of Kellen is very interesting because he seems to know Luthen exists, and this is really important
That
for
part,
understanding
yeah.
why Brasso does what he does at the end of the episode.
Right.
Is Kellen knows Luthen exists. He probably doesn't know Luthen,
Right.
but he
'Cause
knows
says like your
Cassian has
leader,
a friend.
Cassian's leader or boss or Cassian's boss.
Cassian's
or something like that.
boss.
Yeah.
He knows Cassian has a boss
Right.
that sends him on missions. And in order to protect that, Bros is going to have to do what he's going to have to do at the end of the arc. So the scene with Clea, I just want to point out, again, quoting from the Star Wars.com Week 1 trivia guide, quote, Clea Marquis' fractal radio in the back room of Luthen's gallery is partially inspired by an old telephone operator's switchboard. End quote. I also love that the missions from them are still sketchy. Like they're not giving Cassian details.
Yes. Like he gets like the bare minimum information.
And he's like, did you know I couldn't fly the ship?
Yeah, that seems like a weird misstep on their part. No?
It shows how overwhelmed Clea and Luthen are becoming.
Right.
That Clea has literally so much going on. Like she leaves this wedding halfway through because she's like, I literally can't put my phone down for 3 days.
I have to keep working.
I have to keep working. And it's because so much is going on. They will talk about later on. They will talk about as the rebellion grows, it's outgrowing Clea and Luthen.
Yeah.
Like, and that's what I think is really interesting about this sequence is that it shows she's kind of, I don't want to say losing control of it, but she's not able to keep up with everything because so much is happening.
For this whole entire arc, we can kind of talk about it randomly, but because I feel like the important scene is the one.
The important scenes are coming up.
Yeah. But I think that like, well, we can talk about maybe really just, I'm looking at all of it.
Because
really just Willman is like my only.
The next note I have is Willman.
Yeah. That's all my
next note I have is it's almost kind of funny knowing where he's going to go in the series, just how naive he is at this point.
Right, because he's so love struck, so like everything is dire, like my final love kind of situation.
Yeah,
like,
it was
everything.
Like,
it's so
no,
great.
buddy.
But they do such a good job because the scene with Bila is actually really interesting in the fact that like she's embracing him, you know, kind of like for the last time, and she feels his blaster, and she's like, wait. This is now turning into something really
This is too real
and,
for her.
Yeah, this is too real because for her it's all romantic and he's such this nice guy, but then like, whoa, wait, you have a blaster. Like there's not really a need for that on this planet. Like kind of
It's the farm girl falling in love with the
bad boy.
The farm boy trope. Like, and again, if we had more time with her, I think it would have been a more interesting arc.
I think so.
Especially if we maybe find out what happens to her.
Right.
After this, like, does she understand when she shows up at the shop and sees the Imperials? Does she understand what's going on? Does she understand what's happening?
Right.
Does she feel embittered by this? Is this something that she takes a negative response from? We don't know because we don't have time with these characters again.
Yeah. And I'll mention it later when we're talking about the special scene, but there is a moment in this scene where the mom tells her to get back inside or whatever when she sees a certain character look at her.
Yeah. I was like, that the mom knows what's up and it's like,
I didn't even realize that until this watching. Like, I mean, I got it in like a sense of like, get inside, there's Imperials here, but I didn't get it.
No, it's way worse when you know what this guy's about.
Yes, it's so, oh my God. Like I didn't even catch that the first time. It's so good.
It's
like,
fucking scary. Like
that's crazy how they did that.
Little bit of trivia for you from the trivia guide. Quote, Brasso's speeder on Mina-Rau was mounted to a vehicle, allowing it to accelerate and fly completely in camera, as opposed to the VFX compositing typically employed by Star Wars speeders, end quote.
So Brasso has a real speeder is what you're telling me.
So that's a real speeder that he is really riding. It is mounted. He is not driving it. It is mounted to a vehicle.
I love that.
But he is riding along on an actual vehicle that is moving that quickly.
Okay.
So Brasso gets captured, and his immediate reaction is to accuse Kellen of selling him out.
Right.
This is to protect Kellen. Because you can see on Kellen's face, he is shocked.
But he plays it well. Yeah.
And then he kind of gets it.
Right.
And Brasso even kind of gives him some looks that's like, dude, play along.
Yeah.
Because Brasso's going to cover for him, which is a really great choice for Brasso, that when Brasso is in this powerless situation that he is in.
Right.
in these three scenes where somebody is in some way having power taken away from them and how they choose to respond, he chooses to respond by protecting somebody who protected him. He
Right.
chooses to respond by protecting Kellen. And I think that is a great choice for this
Yeah.
character.
And I love how in the beginning, because Kellen basically says, why can't they just leave us alone? Like, we
Hmm.
don't do anything, like, we just live our lives. And that's really what Brasso is giving him here, is that chance to essentially just live their lives, like, without any scrutiny or anything. Because I think it's the one Imperial guy, he's like, "Ugh, thank God we were here today. You know what I mean? We saved your life. We saved your life from this crazy guy who
This
would have
crazy
killed you."
immigrant that we had to
Yeah.
gun down in the fields,
Hmm.
which I'm just going to mention it here, even though it's not
Yeah,
chronological order.
that's
R.I.P. to
fine.
Brasso.
Sad.
You were too good to survive this show.
And this is the first, I think, true like big kill of the season, right?
It
Like
is
this is
the
like the
death of
big,
Brasso.
yeah, the biggest death so far. Which I think when we were watching this, I did kind of say, I was like, oh, I think that there's going to be a major death in every arc. And maybe that'll end up being true. I don't know. We'll find out. But I'm just saying, as of right now,
That to my reckoning,
I
yeah,
think it is
actually, a
true.
major character dies in every single arc.
Every single arc. I think
Every
it,
single
yeah,
arc has someone
has
dying.
one, at least one person that's a big deal.
Two
Yeah,
end with the person dying. One, the person dies in the middle of the arc,
that's right.
and one arc starts with a major character getting killed
Right.
at the end of the first episode of that arc, which is also a 10 out of 10 no notes episode that we will get to when we get to. All right, I think we've done everything other than the Bix scene.
The
I
big
need to talk about this scene with Bix being assaulted. So, final warning, I'm going to talk about this. If you want to check out, check out. Three, two, one. So, I saw this and I would like to institute sort of a new thing for the show. And that is every arc has the scene that I knew was going to be really hard to talk about. This is that scene because I've been thinking this aired what, like about a month ago? A
Yeah,
month ago or so? Month and a half
yeah.
ago by the time we get around to this episode.
Right.
I've been thinking basically nonstop about how I want to approach this.
Okay.
'Cause here's the thing. I have a history with sexual assault, and I'm not going to expand on what that history is. I'm
Right.
not going to expand on whether that history happened to me or somebody close to me, but just know that I have a history with it. And also know that I'm very uncomfortable sharing that information. I'm not happy that I'm sharing that information. That is the absolute cap of information that I want to share about that at all. And the reason I am even sharing that at all is to provide some context for two elements of this scene that I felt like I had to talk about that I personally liked about how this was handled. Now, generally overall, I'm not going to touch on it, but I do want to mention those two things. And I did feel kind of forced to have to to mention that I've had some experience with this topic. Just by nature of there is a school of thought online that if you have not had an experience with that, you should not talk about this at all. And I understand the sentiment on that. I understand the mentality on that. It's not a conversation with an easy answer. If there was an easy answer, we would have found it by now. That's why I feel obligated to mention up top that the two things I'm specifically going to point to as things that I liked about this sequence, and I want to call out about this sequence, are as a direct result of my own history. Number one, I like that Bix fucking beat that man to death with a hammer.
Yes.
It's like I like that because I like that Bix fought back.
Right.
And I like that the arc did not have a man showing up to get her out of this situation.
Which they could have easily done.
Which they could have easily done. They could have easily had Willman or Brasso
Right.
show up, like just in time. The reason I like that Bix fought back is number one, it was personally gratifying to see a rapist get beat to death with a hammer. That was personally for me. But I also think it's important to Bix's character because she doesn't get to fight back at the end of season one.
Right. She's chained to the wall and she can't
She's chained to
actually
the
do
wall and
anything.
she gets rescued by Cassian and dragged out of there by Cassian. And that was something I didn't really like about the ending of season one. Bix doesn't get to save herself. And in this, she actually does. And then she turns around and saves Willman when she shoots that other guy with a shotgun, which was also awesome. I loved that.
Yeah.
But I did think that it was very important that Bix was the one who got to beat the dude to death. And I also liked that she got to fight back and she got to win. The second thing that I really like pinpointed as I think it's important that they did this was they used the word rape.
She literally says it out loud. Yeah.
And it is a shocking moment. And we can debate, the merits of this in Star Wars storytelling all we want. I'm not going to wade into that here. But I like that since they opted to do this storyline, they called a spade a spade.
Right. Because they could have easily used other words. Like, he attacked me.
He attacked me. He assaulted.
He
You
assaulted.
tried
Yeah.
to assault me. Like,
Right. No, they went there, and I do appreciate Tony for doing that. I will say
that, yeah, that they say the word because I think in real life, sexual assault is something that is muddled so much by bad actors being able to use different verbiage to kind of hand wave or justify or play down, particularly when victims are speaking on it. It's easy for bad actors to kind of wave this away. And I like that the show was very clear that this was an attempted rape. That I also think that contributed to part of the discussion about it is that it was very hard for people who like to justify fucking bigots online who love to justify everything the Empire does.
right.
Because they see themselves in the space fascists and they want to idealize the space fascists and they're really uncomfortable when the space fascists do the thing that the real fascists do all the time. And that's really hard to defend. That made them really uncomfortable. And this is why we get some of the ass takes that we got on this episode was because they were bending over backwards to try to find a way that their precious empire, that their precious oppressive galactic state would never, ever, ever condone this.
Right.
This is just one guy who's acting on his own. Like, the system is not set up to encourage this. And I'm like, okay, so why did Bila go inside the house?
Right.
Why are we doing that?
Right, because her mother even just the way that she looks at him, she just knows. Like
She
something
fucking
about
knows.
her, she just knows he's just
Fucking
a bad
knows.
dude. Like
She doesn't know this guy.
Right.
This guy is not stationed on Mina-Rau. They have not seen an Imperial audit in 10 years. She immediately clocks this dude.
Exactly.
That it is all men in this patrol that are in uniform.
Mm-hmm.
They are women in a distant farming area. They are alone.
Right.
Kellen is at the homestead. Or no, Kellen's out at the silos.
No, yeah.
When they arrive.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so she knows what could potentially go down. So I did appreciate that they called a spade a spade.
Yes.
That they said this is what this is, and we are going to just call it what it is. And also, not a thing that is within the text of the scene itself. Adria Arjona, who plays Bix, should win an Emmy.
I agree.
Because holy fuck. The acting in particularly the immediate aftermath after she kills the guy and he dies and she's like inside and she is like staring down a fucking blaster immediately after almost having been assaulted and having to hold it together and defend herself from this guy who's definitely going to shoot her.
Yeah.
Like, Jesus Christ, her acting is so good.
I don't even know what I don't even know what I would give it to her. I would just give it to her. Like, I don't even know what to like categorize it as. I'd just be like, here you go. You just get one.
Let's make a special category for
like
holy fucking God.
Yeah, that was a great.
The acting is so good. And that's all the stuff that I even remotely feel comfortable talking about with my perspective on this scene.
That's fine. I think that's
those conversations.
Yeah.
Those conversations are for my friends.
Right.
And not for the internet.
I also think that like, as much as, this is a Star Wars show and, I think that was it necessary in the fact that I think it works in the story, the writing of it all. I think that it was handled appropriately in the story. I think that the only thing that I think I would have improved on is what you said, which is maybe have that trigger warning in the beginning of the episode because it is a Star Wars. So I think no matter how
we did kind of need to know.
Yeah. How matter like and don't get me wrong, Andor is what we would call the adult or the most dark of the shows, right? I still think that because you have attached the word Star Wars to it, now there is an inherent like possibility that children may or may not be watching this. I also think that it is a more mature show, and parents are responsible for their own kids. However, there should be some kind of warning in the beginning. And I think that it is ultimately up to Disney's responsibility to do that. I do think that was a missed opportunity here. And I think that I think they should probably improve it for future streaming. I don't know if they have changed it since. I mean, since I've watched it yesterday, it has not happened.
It was not present as of May the 23rd when I watched the
Right.
episode last
So,
before recording this episode. They had not added any sort of content warning. And
right.
I do understand that like there are sites out there where you can like they will track the content warnings even if something doesn't. The
Right,
most
right.
famous example being, does the dog die? Which is a website that exclusively tracks
Does the dog
whether or
die?
not there are people who are very sensitive to that, and it
No,
generally
Marley
doesn't
and
get
me
included.
traumatized a whole
Yeah.
generation. I know.
So
I
there's
trust
people
me.
that want to check, like, does the
Yes.
dog die in
Yes.
the piece of media before I go watch it? Because
Totally understand that.
I remember watching I Am Legend with my best friend
Oh,
in high school,
yeah.
and that movie fucked him up
Because the dog.
because the dog dies in that movie,
Right.
and
Spoiler, I
he
guess.
owned five dogs.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
he was really upset. And like he finished the movie, but he
Yeah.
was very, very upset in the theater. Like when we walked out of it, he was really upset about that. So something like there's websites out there that you can check it
Sure.
out. But the problem is we now live in this culture. We
Sure.
now live in this terminally online culture where you are obligated to watch everything when it comes out. Otherwise, you're going to miss something or you're going to get spoiled. And we're now in this like anti spoiler culture to where like everything you have to do is like bent over trying to avoid spoilers because now the spoilers are prevalent. Now it's not you go on a message board. Now it's fucking everywhere because everybody has a social media presence somewhere, or at least a lot of people do, and that will leak too. Meta will feed you that shit directly onto your Facebook and Threads and Instagram. They will throw that shit directly at you, like whether you want to see it or not. And so, yeah, parents maybe don't necessarily have the time to look up, like, is this appropriate for my 14, 15-year-old to watch?
Right.
Like
And that's my
maybe
only
season
thing
one
about it.
might have been, and you might
Yeah.
have come into this with the expectation that, oh, it's going to be about the same as season one, and they're dropping this subplot here.
Yeah, I think that this season in particular, since we have finished it, I do think that there are more mature themes in this season.
Oh,
And this is
definitely.
just the first. I don't think that this is the last that we'll see. And they might not
This
be in
is
the same vein as sexual assault. However, there are certain things that are going to
this
happen.
is not,
Yeah,
I will say flat out, we will get to it when we get to it. This is not the scene that made me the most uncomfortable.
there you go.
Based on my own history. And because the scene that made me the most uncomfortable in the entire show is a part of my history that I am open to talking about, we will discuss at length why one of the funniest scenes in the show also made me the most uncomfortable watching it
Okay.
personally. But this one, yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty universally one of the things with all of the takes flying around about this scene. One of the takes that I am seeing that's pretty universally agreed upon, they did need a fucking content warning.
Yeah,
Like
I think so.
for a Star Wars show, they definitely needed. And sexual violence has always been like kind of off screen in Star Wars. It's been there since Return of the Jedi, but they don't really acknowledge it, which in my mind is the right thing. It's not a topic that you want to necessarily put in something that kids might be watching or reading, which makes its inclusion in Shadows of the Empire so fucking baffling to me. Like, one day we might have to do an episode on Shadows of the Empire just so I can complain about it. But the attempted sexual assault of Leia in that book is so fucking bizarre to me because it's not making a point like Andor does. It's not like they're because the writers want to say something. It's there to be shocking and put Leia in the position of a victim. And that's really fucking gross to me. I don't like that book. And like not in like a The Force Unleashed, haha, I'm a little annoyed by some of the choices that this
Right.
made, and so I will actively I fucking hate Shadows of the Empire
Right.
because of the Leia scene. And I always tell people like if you're going to read Shadows of the Empire, please Google what's in it first, because it's real fucking uncomfy. All right, well that's it for the episode, I think.
Yeah.
Bradley, what are your final thoughts?
Final thoughts on this episode in particular. I thought it was a great building episode of like just tension. I feel like the episode was just like a really good like from start to finish. It just kind of kept going, 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 and it really does have a really great ending that the music just really ties all together. I think in terms of like the arc as a whole, I do love that we get this. I will say it's kind of like a slow burn. Like I think it does kind of start really slow, but like it does escalate. And I really love the wedding subplot of the entire arc is probably my favorite, only because I think that the Mina-Rau stuff is only interesting in this episode, less it is in the other episodes. I think they're more at building or establishing the Mina-Rau in the other episodes. I think this one really is a good kind of cap to that. The wedding stuff though is so good throughout the whole thing because that's like more like I kept wanting to be like, oh my God, where's more of these scenes? Like this is so good. So I think for the first arc, this is a great intro, and I'm glad that they're doing them in arcs because it wouldn't have made sense to watch this week to week. I don't think we would have had the same impact. It wouldn't have felt as good. I think especially with the second episode being as kind of more mediocre as it is, because it is a kind of putting people into place episode. I think that all three together work really well, and I really enjoyed it.
In terms of the strength of arcs, my final thought is I would put this one at the second weakest. I think the next arc is probably the weakest of all of the arcs.
I
And
agree.
that's not an indictment of these episodes themselves. I think that just the third and fourth arcs of the show are so strong that they blow basically most of Star Wars media out of the water just by how good those two arcs actually turn out to be. Basically, we hit episode 8, and what the show does from episode 8 onwards is masterclass TV. Like it is absolutely
I
bangers.
definitely agree.
And I think that these episodes would have been, if you'd put them like in a standard Star Wars project, they would have been the best episodes of it. But because they have to stack up against two BBY and one BBY, it is the second weakest. They are still really good. I agree with you about how tense it is. I agree with you how it's kind of a very fitting conclusion to the tension building. And I also agree that as a viewer, had I not felt obligated to watch it the night it came out to avoid spoilers, and also maybe if I had gotten that content warning at the beginning of the third episode, I think if I'd have just been able to sit down on an afternoon and watch all three of them together like a giant 3-hour movie, I think I would have had a even better experience than I already had kind of watching them and being able to chew on all three of them together. All right, Bradley, what are we doing next week?
Another arc of Andor.
Another arc of Andor
No,
begins.
next week we are doing Ever Been to Gorman? Question mark.
Season 2, Episode 4. Pluggables. You can find Bradley on a shitload of reality TV shows, not on them, just working on them in the back. But if you like reality TV, you can find shows that he has made, such as Queen's Court, King's Court, Temptation Island, The Circle on Netflix, and later seasons of Married to Medicine. If you like reality TV, please watch those shows. It keeps Bradley employed so he can keep making this show. You can find me on the Star Wars TTRPG podcast For Light and Dice. That is a Star Wars TTRPG set in the High Republic era, currently on hiatus because life happens, but should be coming back from hiatus very soon. You can also find queer, mystery, thriller novels that I write. Those are called Beach House Studios. Books 1 and 2 are available for purchase on Amazon, Kobo, and Barnes & Noble. You can also request books 1 and 2 through Overdrive if you want your local library to get the ebooks, so you can check them out that way. Book 3 is coming on May the 31st, so that is a week after recording this, and 5 days after this episode comes out. That is exclusive to Amazon for 3 months, and then that will go wide. That is because Amazon is bullshit. I am sorry. I'm doing the best I can. There we go. Is that shorter for you, Bradley?
That was a lot more concise. The only improvement I'll say is technically King's Court doesn't come out till July 13th. But other than that, I loved it.
All right, you can check out Beach House Studios Threesome. Yes, that's what it's actually called. No, the title doesn't mean what you think it means on May the 31st. And you can check out King's Court premiering on where, Bradley?
On Bravo,
When, Bradley?
July 13th.
Thank you. All righty, well, go ahead and run our socials so we can get away from this episode. Thank you for listening to Gold Squadron Gaze. Did Charles fuck something up? Email us at goldsquadrongaze@gmail.com and let us know. You can follow us on BlueSky, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at Gold Squadron Gaze. Subscribe to us on YouTube at Gold Squadron Gaze, where we post full episodes of this podcast. If you like the podcast, you can also rate us and review us on your favorite podcast app of choice. Please join us next week and every week for another episode of Gold Squadron Gaze. I just love the verbal tick that we can tell when you have messed up when you've messed up reading your summary and then you have to re-say it, and you can kind of tell in the audio that you had to redo it.